The stars outside the viewport blinked indifferently, scattered like distant promises. Inside the cramped command cabin of the human scout ship, the tension was anything but indifferent. Commander Jalen's fingers hovered over the console, his mind tangled in a knot of disbelief. Across the void, the infamous warrior approached, her silhouette unmistakable even in the shadowed glimmer of distant suns. Long ears angled back beneath her battle helmet, her armor gleaming with a cold light that made even the ship's sensors shiver. The galaxy had whispered her name in fear and awe for decades, but here she was, real and terrifying, and completely ignoring the usual war cries. Instead, she advanced with the patience of a storm. Jalen glanced at his crew, a ragtag bunch of spacefarers who looked as ready for an epic battle as a cat faced with a laser pointer. Private Simmons was nervously tapping his helmet, a nervous tick Jalen had learned to find almost endearing. "Sir," Simmons whispered, "you really think she's going to talk? Or just vaporize us into space dust?" Jalen smiled, though it felt more like a grimace. "If she vaporizes us, Simmons, make sure you wave goodbye. It's good form." Simmons swallowed hard but nodded. He was a man who'd survived 3 asteroid storms and 1 questionable alien cuisine experience. If he could live through this, anything was possible. The alien woman, she never gave her name, stepped onto the blasted moon's surface, where the final confrontation was supposed to erupt in fire and fury. Instead, she paused, her long ears twitching as if catching a sound none of them could hear. Jalen, heart hammering and mouth suddenly dry, decided maybe this was his moment. The moment to do something no one had dared. No one had ever dared. He took a slow, steadying breath, then stepped forward. "You're beautiful," he said, voice barely above the whisper of the solar winds outside. The silence that followed was almost comical. The alien woman blinked, a slow, deliberate movement that seemed to freeze time. Then, as if the universe was playing the world's most unexpected joke, she stopped. Her hand relaxed on the hilt of her plasma blade. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the hum of distant satellites and Jalen's own uneven breathing. Simmons muttered from behind, "Did he just flirt with a death machine?" Jalen ignored him. He focused on her eyes, blue like icy comets, fierce as a supernova, and saw something no one else had ever glimpsed. Vulnerability, the kind that made warriors falter and emperors rethink their wars. Her lips twitched, the ghost of a smile, or maybe a twitch of disbelief. And then the tears came. Quiet at first, then gathering like a storm breaking through a fragile dam. They trailed down her cheeks and hit the dusty ground, and for a moment, the battlefield was less a place of death and more a stage for something profoundly human. "I never heard that before," she said, voice rough, like gravel sliding over ancient steel. "From anyone." Jalen blinked. "Well, you're not exactly the type who asks for compliments." She let out a dry chuckle, surprisingly warm and jagged. "You humans are foolish." Then she narrowed her eyes. "Or maybe you're the only kind of crazy enough to survive." Simmons, unable to contain himself, stepped out with a grin. "Hey, if crazy gets results, I'm all in." The alien woman's long ears flicked toward him, and she barked a laugh that echoed through the barren craters. For the first time, the crew felt the oppressive weight of dread shift into something oddly hopeful, something like the beginning of a story nobody expected to tell. As they gathered under a cracked sky heavy with stars, the unlikeliest alliance was forged, not in fire or blood, but in words, awkward jokes, and a moment of fragile truth. The galaxy, vast and cold, watched silently, unaware that a storm had just found its eye in a human voice that dared say, "You're beautiful." The alien woman, still wiping the unexpected tears from her cheeks with a gauntleted hand, stood awkwardly beside the human, her long ears flicking nervously, as if they could hear the laughter of distant stars. "So, you say I'm beautiful, and suddenly I'm supposed to drop my sword and trust you?" she asked, voice low but not unkind. "This is a new form of warfare I was not briefed on." Jalen grinned, the tension in his chest loosening just a bit. "It's called charm, or maybe stupidity. Depends on your point of view." She eyed him with a mixture of suspicion and something almost amused. "Humans," she muttered, "always ready with their peculiar customs. I thought you fought wars with weapons, not words. Well, sometimes, Jalen said, but words can be a lot messier and more effective, especially when the other guy expects a laser blast and gets a compliment instead. Simmons piped up from behind a stack of crates. Yeah, and if you're lucky, you get a bad joke to follow it. The alien's long ears twitched sharply, but instead of anger, a faint smile played at the corners of her lips. You do have an odd sense of humor, she admitted. The crew began the awkward process of lowering their weapons, though Jalen kept his hand close to his sidearm just in case. The alien woman's eyes scanned the surroundings, the remnants of their battlefield now strangely peaceful. She pulled back her hood, revealing a cascade of dark hair streaked with silver, framing her sharp features and those unmistakable long ears that made her both human and otherworldly. So, what now? She asked, voice more curious than combative. We don't exactly have a treaty signed in blood or anything. Jalen shrugged. How about we start with introductions? I'm Jalen, commander of the scout ship Odyssey. These are my people. He gestured to his crew, who offered varying degrees of awkward waves and nods. And you are? Names are complicated, she said, but after a pause she added, You can call me Vera. Vera, Jalen repeated, liking the sound. Nice to meet you. As the moment stretched, a subtle shift happened. The air filled with nervous energy, but also an odd sense of camaraderie. Vera glanced down at a small device clipped to her belt, blinking softly with an alien script. I never thought I'd be disarmed by words. This is unsettling. I hear that, Jalen said with a grin. Last week, my ship's AI tried to flirt with me. It was terrifying. Simmons groaned. Not the AI again. Yeah, Jalen said. I'm still recovering from the is your processor overheating, or is it just me? Lean. Laughter rippled through the group, easing the tension like a balm. Vera's expression softened, her long ears twitching thoughtfully. Perhaps there is strength in unpredictability, and maybe in laughter. She glanced toward the stars as if weighing the vastness of space against this small moment of peace. You humans are strange creatures. We get that a lot, Jalen said, eyes twinkling. But maybe that's why we survive, or at least we get to tell the stories. A faint beep interrupted their banter, the ship's communicator crackling to life. Commander, came a voice sharp and urgent. You need to get back to the ship. The council wants an update on your status. And by the way, Vera's presence is causing quite the diplomatic stir. Jalen exchanged a look with Vera, who shrugged with a dry smile. I always did enjoy making an entrance. Well, Jalen said, let's give them a story worth hearing. As they prepared to leave the moon's surface, a new chapter began. Not one of battle and conquest, but of fragile alliances, unexpected friendship, and the slow unraveling of a warrior's heart. Above them, the stars blinked again, indifferent yet somehow promising. And somewhere in the vast silence of space, a small ship carried a human and an alien woman, long ears catching whispers of a future neither could yet imagine. The ship hummed with the quiet efficiency of a well-oiled machine, its engine thrumming through the metal floors as if it too were eager to witness what came next. Jalen sat at the navigation console, fingers dancing lightly over the controls, while Vera stood nearby, arms crossed, her long ears twitching as she scanned the star maps projected in holograms above the dashboard. You humans and your fancy glowing maps, she muttered, half amused. In my time, we used star charts carved into crystal tablets. Yeah, Jalen replied with a grin, but try swiping those with greasy fingers. They don't do well with touchscreen. Vera's lips twitched, her version of a smile, and for a moment the impossible gap between their worlds seemed narrower. The silence between them stretched, filled with the soft beeps and whirs of the ship's systems. Finally, Vera broke it. You said you want to understand me, but what do you see when you look at me? A warrior? A threat? Or something else? Jalen hesitated, then shrugged. Honestly, at first just a problem to solve, a ticking bomb in armor. But after that moment, I see someone more complicated. Someone who laughs, who cries, who's tired of fighting. Tired, she echoed, voice low. That's something few have ever seen in me. She gestured toward her hands. I was made to be unstoppable. That was my purpose. No weakness allowed. Sounds exhausting, Jalen said, smiling. Yeah, well, I'm not exactly a spa day either. I deal with coffee that tastes like recycled engine fuel, and a crew that thinks cleaning the mess hall is optional. Vera's long ears twitched sharply. I do not envy your species' taste in beverages, Jalen chuckled. Fair enough. Then with mock seriousness, he added, but hey, at least you don't have to listen to Simmons try to sing in zero gravity. Vera raised a brow. Is that a threat or a warning? Simmons, who'd been lurking nearby, chimed in. Hey, my rendition of Space Ballad number 5 feet is practically legendary. Legendary in the sense that it clears the room, Jalen quipped. Laughter bubbled between them, a fragile thing that lightened the weight of their shared past. Suddenly the ship shuddered, a low rumble echoing through the hull. What was that? Vera asked, eyes sharp. Jalen's fingers flew over the console. Energy spike. Could be a nearby nebula or, more likely, a patrol drone curious about us. Curious or hostile? She asked, already reaching for her weapon. Let's hope curious. Although with our luck, it's probably hostile disguised as curious. The ship's sensors blinked wildly as an unfamiliar vessel emerged from the shadows, a sleek craft with shifting panels that shimmered like liquid metal. Stealth tech, Jalen muttered. Not friendly. Vera's eyes narrowed, long ears flattening slightly. So, back to the usual then. The drone hailed them, a crackling voice speaking in rapid alien code. Jalen toggled the translator. This is Commander Jalen of the Odyssey. We come in peace. The reply was blunt. Surrender Vera immediately. She is a threat to the Galactic Council. Threat? Vera scoffed. I'm barely a threat to my own emotions these days. Jalen shot her a look. Yeah, that emotional warfare is brutal. The drone's weapon systems began to hum, and the tension ratcheted up. Brace for evasive maneuvers, Jalen shouted. The ship lurched, twisting through asteroid debris with surprising agility. Vera, gripping the console, let out a breath. You humans fly like you're running from your problems. Well, that's one way to put it, Jalen smiled. But it works. As the drone closed in, Simmons managed to hack its systems, sending a shower of sparks across its hull. Take that, space bullies, he yelled triumphantly. The drone retreated, leaving the Odyssey battered but intact. Vera looked at Jalen, a glimmer of respect in her eyes. You and your crew are not as fragile as I thought. We're like space cockroaches, Jalen said. Hard to kill and kind of annoying. They both laughed, the sound echoing through the ship's corridors. In the quiet aftermath, Vera reached out, hesitating before placing a hand on Jalen's shoulder. Maybe I do not have to be alone in this. Jalen met her gaze, nodding. Maybe we're stronger together. And hey, if nothing else, you'll never have to listen to Simmons singing alone. A small mercy, she said with a smile. As the Odyssey sailed through the star-studded void, two unlikely allies began weaving a new story, one of trust, humor, and the strange kind of courage it takes to face not only enemies, but the battles within. Vera stood by the viewport, long ears twitching as she watched the swirling colors of a nearby nebula dance across the starfield. You humans have the strangest sense of direction, she said, turning sharply to Jalen. Instead of flying straight to your destination, you meander through gas clouds and cosmic storms. Is this your idea of sightseeing or just getting lost? Jalen chuckled, hands gripping the console. We call it scenic route. It's a way to remind ourselves we're alive. Plus, it keeps the crew entertained. Simmons, perched nearby with a tablet, smirked. And by entertained, he means trying not to puke in zero gravity. Vera's eyes glinted with amusement. I suppose even warriors need a break from constant battle. Even warriors, Jalen agreed, need to learn how to relax without accidentally blowing something up. The hum of the ship's engines softened as they slipped deeper into the nebula, the swirling gases painting the cabin with ethereal light. Suddenly, the communications panel beeped urgently. Incoming transmission, Jalen said, tapping the console. The holographic face of Admiral Cray appeared, stern and unyielding. Commander, the Council demands you bring Vera in for immediate debriefing. Her past actions threaten galactic stability. Vera's jaw tightened. They see me as a weapon, not a person. Jalen frowned. Well, I'm pretty sure you're more than just a walking arsenal. He glanced at Vera. And we're going to prove it. The Admiral's image flickered. Be warned, resistance will be met with force. The transmission ended abruptly. Simmons muttered, well, that's not ominous at all. Vera let out a dry laugh. I thought the council was more subtle. Apparently subtlety isn't their strong suit, Jalen replied. So what's the plan? Vera asked. We show them who you really are. Not just a warrior, but someone capable of change. Sounds risky. Yeah, but nothing worth doing isn't. The ship's AI chimed in. Warning, council patrols detected in proximity. Looks like the party's starting, Jalen said. He activated the ship's cloaking system, a shimmer rippling across the hull. Time for some space hide-and-seek. As they navigated the nebula's labyrinth, Vera revealed fragments of her past. The battles fought, the losses endured, the mask of fury she'd worn for centuries. I was built to destroy, she confessed, never to feel. But your words, they cracked something inside me. Jalen nodded. Sometimes it takes someone willing to see past the armor. Simmons added, or someone who's just good at awkward compliments. Vera smirked. Perhaps both. The ship jolted violently as a council cruiser decloaked nearby, scanning them with piercing sensors. Hold steady, Jalen commanded. The cruiser's voice crackled. Identify yourselves. Odyssey, on a peaceful mission, Jalen replied smoothly, requesting safe passage. The cruiser hesitated, then relented. Proceed, but be warned. Vera remains a person of interest. The tension eased slightly as the cruiser sped away. That was close, Simmons breathed. Too close, Vera agreed. Later, as the crew gathered in the mess hall, Simmons attempted another round of zero-gravity karaoke, much to everyone's horror. Jalen laughed, shaking his head. Maybe we should focus on surviving first, then your musical career? Vera smiled genuinely, her long ears flicking in rhythm. Your species is full of surprises. Jalen raised a glass. To surprises, then, and to finding peace in the chaos of stars. The crew echoed the toast, their laughter blending with the distant hum of the cosmos. Outside, the nebula's colors swirled endlessly, a reminder that even in the vast darkness, beauty and hope could be found in the most unexpected places. The moment Vera and Jalen stepped onto the Galactic Council's imposing command deck, the atmosphere thickened with anticipation, and not the fun kind. Vera's long ears twitched subtly, betraying the calm she tried to project. They're like a room full of disappointed librarians, she muttered. Jalen smirked. Yeah, but at least librarians don't usually have plasma rifles ready to zap you if you sneeze. The stern faces before them didn't crack a smile, but a flicker of curiosity sparked in the eyes of the council leader. Vera, the leader began, voice cold but measured, you stand accused of numerous offenses against galactic peace, yet here you are, unshackled and oddly cooperative. Explain this change. Vera's gaze met his unwaveringly. I have been a weapon, a tool forged for war, but I am more than that now. I have learned the value of compassion, trust, and even humor. She cast a glance at Jalen, and it took a human's strange, persistent kindness to show me this. Jalen stepped forward, voice steady. We've seen what she's capable of, both destruction and healing. The galaxy needs more of the latter. A murmur rippled through the council chamber. The leader raised a hand, silencing the room. Very well. We will consider this evolution, but understand, trust must be earned. As the council deliberated, Simmons leaned over to Jalen. So, does this mean I can finally quit my day job and start the zero-gravity comedy tour? Jalen laughed. Maybe once we're all out of danger. Until then, keep the jokes coming. They're our secret weapon. Vera chuckled softly, the sound like a rare melody in the cold halls. Later, standing beside Jalen in the quiet observation lounge, Vera exhaled deeply. I never thought I'd find peace, not just on battlefields, but within myself. Jalen nodded. It's not easy, but sometimes the toughest battles are the ones inside us. She looked at him, eyes glimmering. Thank you for seeing me, not just the warrior, And thank you, Jalen replied, for reminding me that even the fiercest hearts can learn to heal. Outside, the stars stretched infinitely, a canvas of endless possibilities. Together, they faced the future, no longer as adversaries or strangers, but as allies bound by shared scars, laughter, and hope. In a galaxy often shadowed by conflict, their story became a beacon, a testament that sometimes the simplest words, "You're beautiful," could change the course of everything. The throne room smelled like ancient metal and desperate pride. Mason Rourke didn't know what he'd expected from the seat of an alien empire. Maybe more floating candles, fewer guards who looked like they could bench press tanks. But what he got was a hall carved from obsidian and starlight, with windows that showed only the slow spiral of twin moons beyond the sky. It was beautiful in that cold, imperial way, like the kind of dinner date where you just knew you were going to end up poisoned. He walked slowly across the gleaming floor, boots echoing with every step, a faint hitch in his gait from a plasma burn he'd picked up on Harrow's Folly 3 years back. That burn had ended his career in the Terran Corps. This step might just end everything else. At the far end of the room, she sat, Queen Saraval of the Alari Dominion, tall, wrapped in gleaming robes that shimmered between blue and violet like oil on water, and eyes like the deepest part of a wormhole. Distant, unblinking, old. Her long ears were folded slightly back, a sign of either thoughtfulness or the desire to stab someone. Mason wasn't well versed in alien etiquette, but he made a mental bet on stab. "You are the human they sent?" she asked, her voice more silk than steel, but both were there. "No, Your Majesty," Mason said, bowing just low enough to be respectful, but not enough to pull a muscle. "I'm the one no one else wanted to send, which makes me perfect for what you're asking." She regarded him in silence. 2 guards shifted behind her, their armor humming faintly with a defensive charge. Mason flashed them a smile, which was mostly teeth and zero sincerity. "My daughter is missing," the Queen said. "She vanished beyond the border 3 standard weeks ago. No trace, no demands, nothing. I read the brief. Disappeared somewhere near the Grellan Shards. Lovely neighborhood, full of pirates, slavers, and people who still think mullets are acceptable." The Queen did not smile. "Right," Mason muttered. "Too soon." "You will retrieve her," Saraval said. "Alive, untouched." "Untouched is a strong word," Mason said. "You know the kind of company in that zone? If she's been out there this long, she's probably picked up a few scars, some bad habits, maybe a tattoo." "You okay with a tattooed daughter?" The guards took a step forward. Saraval lifted one hand and they stopped. Her eyes never left Mason. "If you succeed," she said slowly, "you may ask anything of me. Wealth, power, even a crown." "I've got a thing about Hat," Mason said, "but I'll consider it." He was escorted out by a different door, probably so they could sterilize the floor behind him. As he walked, he tried not to think about what he just agreed to. He was just supposed to pick up salvage on Iran's belt, maybe smuggle a few illegal AI cores past the customs scanners. But now he was rescuing a royal from a war zone, for a monarch who looked like she ordered executions before breakfast. And still a part of him, the stubborn, broken bit that hadn't learned better, was intrigued. 2 hours later, Mason was in a hangar bay, bigger than any he'd seen in the Corps. His ship was waiting. The last word. A modified Striker-class corvette with paint scars older than some planets. She wasn't fast, she wasn't pretty, but she'd gotten him out of worse spots than this. Mostly. "Pre-flight check complete," said a voice through his neural link. "Also, you are an idiot." "Nice to see you too, Vex," Mason muttered. The ship's onboard AI had developed a personality somewhere between overprotective sister and disgruntled tax auditor. "Prep jump calculations for the Grellan Shards." "You're seriously doing this?" Vex asked. "Do you want to die poor and stupid?" "It's royalty," Mason said, strapping into the cockpit. "She offered me a crown." "Crowns are heavy," Vex said. "They do terrible things to your hairline." They jumped 3 minutes later. Mason watched the stars stretch into streaks as space-time warped around them. The sensation was still weird after all these years, like his insides were trying to high-five each other through his spine. The Grellan Shards weren't a place so much as a warning, a fractured belt of asteroids and dead colonies, long since abandoned to pirates, warlords, and the kind of people who made furniture out of bones. Mason landed on a former mining moon, now converted into a black market bazaar. The air smelled like oil, smoke, and regret. He passed a booth selling cybernetic arms, another hawking genetically enhanced rats, now with empathy, and a suspiciously shiny stand where a man tried to sell him a memory of falling in love. Mason declined. He preferred his heartbreaks earned, not purchased. He found his contact in the back room of a bar called the Comet's Tooth. She was a fixer, half human, half Ilari, all trouble. Her name was Dea, and she smiled like she knew where his liver was stored. "You're looking for the princess?" she asked, sipping a drink that glowed blue. "Word travels fast," Mason muttered, eyeing the exits. "She's not missing. She ran, gave herself up to the rebels." Mason raised a brow. "Voluntarily?" "Not all royalty likes being told who to marry and when to speak," Dea said. "She went beyond the lines to try to stop the war. Foolish, brave." Mason leaned back. "You know where she is?" Dea smiled wider. "I know someone who does, but they're not cheap." "Lucky me," Mason said. "I've got a queen's promise in my back pocket." Dea snorted. "Careful, Rourke. Those expire faster than ration bread." He left the bar with a data chip and a destination. A rebel-controlled colony carved into a canyon of red stone. No-fly zone. Guards on every ridge. And a princess who apparently didn't want to be saved. He stood at the edge of the canyon hours later, scoping it through a rusted spyglass while chewing on a protein bar that tasted like betrayal. The wind howled. His odds of survival were dropping by the minute. "Vex," he whispered, "remind me why I do these things?" "Because you're bored, and you miss your daughter, and somewhere in that gravel pit you call a heart, you think this might make a difference." Mason sighed. "Well," he said, "at least I brought the good grenades." Mason crouched in the dust, squinting at the canyon through cracked infrared goggles. Rebel patrols swept the ridges like clockwork. Two-man teams in patched armor, plasma rifles slung casual as laundry baskets. One of them even whistled. Mason had the distinct feeling it was the theme to a children's cartoon, which somehow made it worse. He checked the data chip again. The coordinates pointed to a structure buried deep inside the canyon walls, an old geothermal plant repurposed into a rebel clinic. According to Dea's intel, that's where the princess was, Lyra Saraval. He still hadn't decided whether she was brave, foolish, or a masochist with a martyr complex. Probably a combination. "All right, Vex," he muttered. "What's the plan?" "Run in, get shot, bleed dramatically, maybe cry a little, and get taken to the clinic," Vex said. "From there, improvise." That was sarcasm, wasn't it? Just enough to keep your expectations low. Mason sighed and slipped down the ridge. The descent was rocky, the dust too red, the footing too loose. He nearly twisted his ankle twice and cursed everything from Ilari gravity to whoever designed the soles on ex-military boots. By the time he reached the canyon floor, he was sweaty, irritable, and reconsidering every life choice since age 10. He didn't go straight for the entrance. He circled the edge, eyes scanning for secondary access points. The rebels might be idealists, but they weren't idiots. There'd be watchers, probably drones, maybe a bored sniper with nothing better to do than pick off strangers with weird haircuts. Mason flattened against a wall of oxidized metal and pulled a tiny orb from his belt. He tapped it twice. The orb lifted silently, pulsed once in acknowledgement, and zipped upward. Vex streamed the feed into his optic. "3 guards at the main entry," she whispered into his communicator. "Internal motion sensors. Oh, and someone's pet lizard is blocking the auxiliary tunnel." "Lizard? It's the size of a scooter and has more teeth than you." "Charming. Remind me to send Dea a fruit basket. Make it poison fruit." Mason picked the auxiliary tunnel anyway. Less visibility, fewer eyes, and hopefully, a distracted reptile. He crawled through a broken service duct, coated in what he really hoped was moss. The scent reminded him of a sock drawer left in a sauna. As he neared the end, he heard soft humming. Not from a lizard, from a girl. He froze, listened again. The melody was old. Ilari folk, if he remembered right. Something about stars and bones and destiny. Comforting if you liked your lullabies with existential dread. He peeked through the grate. Inside the clinic, past a surgical table and a flickering holoscreen, stood the princess, Lyra Saraval. She wasn't in a cage. She wasn't tied up. She wasn't crying for help. She was sewing a wound closed on a rebel soldier's arm, her long ears tied back with a faded ribbon, her eyes calm and focused. The rebel winced. She told him to stop whining or she'd let the lizard finish the job. The man laughed like it wasn't the first time she'd said that. Mason blinked. Well, he whispered, that complicates things. He waited until she was alone. It took 3 hours, a full flask, and 2 episodes of Space Detective Vargas streamed silently through his optic implant. When Lyra finally left the clinic wing and wandered toward a dark hallway, Mason moved.
She didn't scream when he grabbed her. She slammed an elbow into his ribs, kicked his shin, and tried to yank free, until he whispered her name. Princess. She froze. Then, "Who the hell are you?" "Rescue party." She stared at him, breath quick, eyes sharp. "I didn't ask for one." "Yeah, well," Mason grunted, rubbing his ribs. "Your mother disagrees." She stepped back, just enough to see him fully. "You're human." "Last I checked." "And you snuck into a rebel outpost, alone." "I've had worse dates." She looked at him like he was either brave or very stupid, possibly both. "Why are you here?" she asked. "Bring you home, save a kingdom. Probably get knighted or thrown in jail depending on how you take this." Her face hardened. "I'm not a prisoner. I came here willingly. If you drag me back, the war will never end." "I wasn't told that part." "Of course you weren't. The queen wants a story she can control. Abducted daughter, daring rescue. You were supposed to be the hero." "I do like a good dramatic entrance." "I'm serious." "So am I." He paused. "Okay, not always, but mostly." Lyra crossed her arms. "I'm not going." "Well, that's going to make this a long, awkward walk back." She snorted. "You're insane." "Only on even-numbered days." A silence stretched between them. Finally, she exhaled. "There's a safe house on the North Ridge. No guards, just supplies. We can talk there. But if you try to force me out, you'll sick the lizard on me." "Got it." They moved under cover of night, cloaked in the soft purple light of twin moons. As they walked, she asked questions. How he got here, why he agreed. He gave flippant answers, sprinkled with half-truths and bad jokes. She rolled her eyes but didn't stop asking. He noticed the way she winced when she moved too fast, the tiny burn scar on her collarbone, the way her hand hovered near her waist, not for a weapon, but for something missing. "You were trying to negotiate peace," he said finally. She nodded. "And they shot you down." "Not immediately. First they listened, then they argued. Then someone tried to kidnap me for ransom. Then someone else saved me. Then we realized we had a clinic full of wounded and no real medics. So you stayed." "Someone had to." At the safe house, she handed him a ration bar. It tasted like algae dipped in regret. "I liked your old stories," she said suddenly. "Before the war, you used to write." Mason blinked. "You read those?" "Everyone did. You made the war feel winnable." He looked down. "Didn't feel that way from where I was sitting." "Then why are you here now?" He hesitated. "Because someone asked me to be the hero again, and because maybe I needed to try." Lyra didn't answer right away. Then softly, "We're both fools." "Yeah," Mason said, "but we make great conversation." Mason woke to the smell of something cooking. For a split second in that blurry space between sleep and consciousness, he thought it was bacon. Real bacon. Then his brain caught up and reminded him he was deep in rebel territory on a desert moon, where pigs didn't exist, and breakfast was probably rehydrated algae paste. Sure enough, when he sat up, Lyra was crouched near the heating unit, poking a pan of greenish goop with the solemn intensity of a person attempting to convince the food not to kill them. "Smells like enthusiasm," Mason said, dragging himself upright. "Careful," she replied, not looking up. Too much sarcasm before breakfast, and this stuff turns acidic. He stretched with a groan. The safe house was barely more than a cave with reinforced plating and a power core someone had definitely stolen from a cargo hauler. A cracked holomap flickered near the far wall, showing the ridges they'd crossed the night before. He stepped over to it, eyes scanning the terrain. Rebel movements increasing, he muttered. They're preparing for something. Retaliation, Lyra said. They think the Queen is planning a surface sweep. Preemptive strike. She might be. She wouldn't. She stopped herself, then said more quietly, She might, especially if she thinks I'm dead. She doesn't think you're dead. She thinks you're damsel in distressing your way through a ransom cave, waiting for Sir Sarcasm here to save the day. Lyra handed him a bowl of algae paste and sat cross-legged across from him. He took a bite. It tasted like boiled despair. He made a face. Don't insult the food, she warned. It listens. If I die, tell people I fell in battle. Don't mention this sludge. He stirred the paste absent-mindedly. You know, I still haven't figured out if you're incredibly brave or just genetically immune to common sense. You're the one who walked into a rebel camp with nothing but a name and a mediocre smile.
Hey, he said, pointing his spoon at her. This smile won awards. From who? 2 bartenders and an AI therapist. She smiled, the first real one he'd seen, and it caught him off guard. In that moment, she looked less like royalty and more like someone who hadn't had a reason to laugh in a very long time. The map pinged. Vex's voice crackled in his earpiece. We've got movement, big movement, convoys, dropships, and guess what? They're coming here. Mason cursed under his breath. We've been burned. Someone ratted out the safe house. Lyra's expression darkened. How long do we have? An hour, maybe less. She stood, already moving. There's an old mining tunnel behind this ridge. If we make it there, we can lose them in the caverns. And then what? Wander through pitch-black tunnels, hoping the rats are vegetarian? Better odds than staying here. He grabbed his bag and followed. Outside, the wind kicked up red dust in choking gusts. The sky above was cloudless, the second sun beginning to crest the jagged cliffs, casting long shadows over the canyon. They made their way across uneven rock and down a narrow passage. Lyra moved like she knew the terrain. Mason moved like someone trying not to twist his ankle for the 3rd time in 2 days. At the entrance to the tunnel, she paused. We'll lose signal once we're inside. No communications, no drone support. Perfect, Mason said. Blind, underground, and potentially eaten by cave monsters. You know how to spoil a guy. The tunnels swallowed them whole. The light behind vanished quickly, replaced by a cold, silent dark. Their footsteps echoed on the ancient stone, and Mason's HUD flickered as the interference thickened. After about 10 minutes, the silence got to him. Tell me something weird, he said. Lyra raised an eyebrow. What? Just anything. Distract me. Keep the claustrophobia from setting in. She thought for a second. I once pretended to be my cousin to get out of an arranged betrothal. Took me 3 weeks to undo the paperwork. Mason grinned. Scandalous. Your turn. I once ate an entire ration crate because I was dared to. Got food poisoning for a week. Threw up in my commanding officer's helmet. Lyra laughed, loud and sudden. The sound bounced off the tunnel walls and sounded like it came from 20 versions of her. Mason smiled in the dark. They passed an old mining station, broken rails, dead consoles, and the skeleton of what might have once been a transport mech. Vex would have had a field day ranting about the salvage opportunities. Mason tapped the console anyway, hoping for a miracle. It sparked once. Then a voice crackled to life through a corroded speaker. Security override accepted. Map system online. A crude map flickered onto a cracked wall panel. Well, he said, it's ugly, but it's honest work. Lyra leaned closer. If we follow this shaft here, we'll come out near the eastern basin. We can intercept a rebel transmission hub. If I can prove I'm alive and not kidnapped, you might stop the Queen from turning the surface to ash. That's the idea. Mason studied the map. There's a shortcut here. Cuts through some kind of drill zone. Probably collapsed. Probably full of flesh-eating cave bats. Definitely. They took it anyway. Halfway through, the ground trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then the sound hit. A low, grinding moan like 1,000 engines crying out for therapy. "What is that?" Mason asked, weapon drawn. "Old mining drone," Lyra whispered. They were set to self-repair. Some of them never stopped. The thing lumbered out of the dark moments later, 12 feet tall, covered in mining claws and fused panels, its optic sensor blinking madly. A long mechanical voice echoed, "Ore detected. Initiate extraction." "I am not ore!" Mason yelled as he dodged a swinging claw. They ran. The drone gave chase, smashing through walls and ancient scaffolding. Lyra led the way, weaving through tunnels too narrow for the drone to follow, but it was relentless, chewing through rock and steel. Mason threw a plasma charge behind him. It went off with a flash of blue light, stunning the drone long enough for them to escape into the basin. They emerged coughing and covered in dust, just as the sun hit full glare overhead. A rebel outpost blinked in the distance. Antennae, solar panels, and a comm tower shaped like a tuning fork. Lyra turned to him, breathless. "We're close." Mason nodded. "Next time," he said, "let's just take the scenic route." With less robots, the rebel outpost looked like someone had dropped a junkyard from orbit and then politely asked a solar engineer to do what you can with it. Solar panels tilted at odd angles, half of them cracked. The main comms tower was held together by what Mason sincerely hoped was welding, though it might have been chewing gum in spite. Lyra crouched behind a crate, scanning with her field lens. 3 guards, maybe 4 inside. No turrets. Their backup generators fried. That's why they haven't moved camp. "Charming place," Mason said, squinting at a nearby antenna that was sparking rhythmically. "It's like a postcard from a future where nothing works and everyone's slightly radioactive." "They've got an uplink to the inner rebel network. If I can broadcast a live message from there, encrypted with my biometrics, we can force a stop to the Queen's invasion pattern." "Force?" Mason asked. "Or politely beg while the countdown ticks? Diplomacy is just begging with better grammar. I like you more every time you terrify me." She smirked, and for a second, Mason forgot they were crouched behind a broken drone hauler in enemy territory. They made their move just after midday when the sun hit its peak, and the guards started looking like they'd rather nap than patrol. Mason took the left, sliding around the outer fence with practiced ease. Lyra took the right, gliding low and fast like she was born in recon gear. Mason flanked a guard lounging near the battery banks, humming a tune about revolution and fried noodles. He tapped the guy on the shoulder. When the guard turned, confused, Mason punched him. The sound his face made against the crate was deeply unsatisfying. "Do they not teach proper thud anymore?" Mason muttered, dragging the unconscious man out of view. Lyra waved him over. "One inside, stationed at the console. You up for distraction duty?" "My whole life is a distraction." He burst through the door like a drunk theater actor, arms wide. "Emergency! Huge! There's a lava worm with lasers." The guard jumped up. "What?" "Yeah, it just ate a cow and recited poetry. It's tragic." While the man stumbled outside in a panic, Lyra slipped inside and locked the door. A second later, she poked her head out. "You are the dumbest genius I've ever met." "I try to keep my brand consistent." The console was a mess of tangled wires, flickering panels, and a keyboard that looked like it had been chewed on. Lyra cracked her knuckles and got to work, fingers flying across keys. The room hummed as the signal aligned. Beginning biometric encryption, authenticating. A small panel flipped open, revealing a scanner. She pressed her palm against it. It glowed blue, scanning every line of her skin, then blinked green. "Identity confirmed. Lyra Saraval, heir of House Tyren. Designate level 1. A soft chime rang. "Say something royal," Mason whispered. She cleared her throat. "This is Princess Lyra Saraval. I am alive. I am not being held against my will. Any act of war based on my disappearance is invalid. Stand down all assault orders." The console began auto-encrypting. Lyra exhaled. "Transmission sent." A pause. Mason frowned. "That was almost too easy." The comms crackled. "That's because someone rerouted the signal." They froze. A figure stepped into the doorway. A tall man with graying hair and an eye implant glowing red. His armor bore no insignia, only black panels and a thin curved blade at his hip. General Tyrus, Lyra said, voice flat. You're alive. Flattered you're surprised. He stepped inside slowly. Mason instinctively shifted in front of her, one hand on his plasma pistol. Tyrus smiled. Ah, the human. The Queen's little errand boy. Mason didn't flinch. You're late. The welcome snacks are gone. You're very brave, Tyrus said. Or very stupid. I get that a lot. The general turned to Lyra. You think a single broadcast will stop a war you helped ignite? Your mother won't listen. She's already mobilizing planetary bombardments. I had to try. Try harder. His voice sharpened. Come with me, willingly. I can still protect you. I don't need your protection, Tyrus. I needed the truth. You lied. About the rebels, about their intentions. You wanted war. I wanted freedom. You would have given them our world on a silver platter. They're not monsters. Neither are we. But war makes monsters of us all. He stepped closer. Mason raised his weapon. One more step and I find out what your spleen looks like. You won't shoot. I have no spleen quota to hit. I'm feeling lucky. A standoff. Then Tyrus exhaled. We're leaving. Now. Not happening, Mason said. Tyrus drew his blade, not fast but deliberate. Its edge shimmered with magnetized plasma. Then bleed for her. Lyra stepped between them. No. Lyra, no more blood for me. No more sacrifices. If you fight him, I'll never forgive you. Tyrus paused. For the first time his anger dimmed, replaced by something older. Regret. I raised you, he said quietly. I protected you when the court would have used you like a pawn. I know. He looked at her one last time. Then run, because next time I won't hesitate. He turned and vanished into the canyon, cloak trailing behind him like smoke. Mason let out a long breath. Nice guy. You two dated? Gods, no. He changed my diapers. Mason blinked. Well, that adds a whole new flavor of awkward. The console beeped. Transmission complete. Uplink confirmed by Central Command. Lyra straightened. It's done. The Queen will see it. She'll know. Assuming Tyrus doesn't intercept it first. We have to get off the ridge, fast. As they fled through the far side of the outpost, Mason couldn't help but glance up at the sky. Somewhere above, warships waited like hungry wolves, teeth bared. He muttered, this better be the start of a happy ending. Lyra, running beside him, smiled faintly. Let's just survive the next chapter. The transport skiff groaned under their weight as it climbed out of the canyon, its repulsor lifts stuttering like a tired horse. Mason adjusted the throttle with a smack and swore under his breath, which, judging by the way the console hissed back at him, only offended it further. You sure this thing can make it to orbit? He asked. It was designed to haul ore through volcanic ash, Lyra replied, cinching the straps on the emergency transmission case. So, maybe. Comforting. Below them, the rebel basin grew smaller, pixelated in dust and smoke. Above them, the sky shimmered, not with the warm glow of peace, but the cold silver glint of destroyers holding position. The Queen's fleet had arrived. And if the comms chatter Mason intercepted was right, they were minutes from initiating atmospheric cleansing, which in military speak meant blow everything up and sort the politics out later. Ping her again, Mason said. She's got to have seen your broadcast by now. Lyra tapped the uplink. Still no response. Either the Queen's ignoring it, or Tyrus has jammed the confirmation. Great! We're trying to stop a war with the interstellar version of voicemail. The ship jolted as a proximity alarm shrieked. Mason grabbed the yoke. A moment later, a rebel fighter screamed past them, engines flaring. Looks like Tyrus didn't take the hint, Mason growled. He's still trying to stop us. Correction, he's trying to stop me. Semantics! Lyra climbed into the dorsal turret and powered it up. Buy me 10 seconds. You got 7. After that, we start praying. He dove the skiff under a rock arch, skimming dangerously close to the ridgeline as plasma bolts scorched the air above them. Lyra fired. The turret hummed, tracking fast. Her first volley missed, but the second clipped a wing. The rebel fighter spiraled away smoking. Not bad for a princess. I grew up on a palace moon. We had extracurriculars. The clouds thinned as they hit upper atmosphere. The blue sky bled into black, and the starfield opened like a promise. But orbit wasn't safe yet. As they crested the edge, a destroyer loomed before them, the Regalia, flagship of the Tyran fleet. Its weapons were already tracking them. Okay, Mason muttered. This is where we either get vaporized or make history. Lyra sat beside him, eyes fixed ahead. Send a direct transmission. Target, my mother. And say what? Hi, it's us again. Please don't explode everything. Let me speak. He opened the channel. The Queen's face appeared in hologram, older, sharper than Lyra, with the same long ears and golden eyes. But her expression was colder than vacuum. Daughter, she said, I warned you not to trust a human. Lyra didn't flinch. And yet here we are, still alive. You ran, you vanished, we prepared for war. I vanished because your advisor orchestrated my disappearance. Tyrus's face flickered onto the screen beside the Queen. Lies. He staged the abduction, manipulated rebel communications. I have proof encoded in this case. Comms logs, intercepted orders, false dispatches. He wanted the war. The Queen's eyes narrowed. Why? Tyrus opened his mouth, but Lyra was faster. Because peace threatened his power, because our people respect unity, not bloodshed, and because he feared a future where I rule instead of him. For a long moment, silence. Then Mason added, also, he tried to kill us with a mining robot. I just feel like that deserves a footnote. The Queen studied her daughter, then said quietly, transmit the evidence. Lyra pressed the command. The data streamed. Every forged order, every concealed report, every manipulated broadcast. Tyrus turned away from the feed. Not in anger, just resignation. He knew it was over. Within minutes, the weapon systems on the Regalia powered down. So did those of the fleet behind it. The Queen said, return to me. Bring the human. Mason blinked. Wait, what? You risked your life, she said with the faintest tilt of her head. That makes you inconveniently honorable. Lyra grinned. See? She likes you. Oh no, that's the same tone my drill sergeant used before he made me mop shuttle decks with my toothbrush. The skiff docked moments later. Inside the flagship, the air felt like it hadn't known warmth in years. The Queen stood waiting, regally dressed in violet armor so clean it looked forged from starlight. Mason stood awkwardly beside Lyra, unsure if he should bow, salute, or fake a transmission failure. The Queen looked at him. You saved my daughter. He opened his mouth, but she continued. You defied orders, breached sovereign space, and violated diplomatic law in 7 systems. You're welcome. I said I would give you anything. Mason paused. I didn't do this for reward. Then accept something more dangerous. A future, she extended a small seal. If you choose to stay, you'll be granted full citizenry, land, command, even a voice. A voice? In court. He blinked. You want me in politics? You already changed the course of a war. Why stop now? He glanced at Lyra, who was watching him with something unreadable in her eyes. Hope, maybe, or mischief. He took the seal. Later, standing on a balcony of the Tyran capital with Lyra beside him, Mason looked out over the gleaming skyline and sighed. I'm going to have to wear something formal, aren't I? Yes, and learn to say your grace without sounding like you stubbed your toe. I miss lava worms already. She nudged his shoulder. You did good. He looked at her. We did. The stars above glittered in quiet approval. Peace was still fragile, the future uncertain. But for the first time in his life, Mason felt like he belonged somewhere. Not because he fought for it or stole it, but because he earned it, and because one stubborn alien with long ears and a sharper mind than any blade believed in him.